Alright everyone, you ever hear of Joe Lockhart? He was one of Clinton's people. Link in the description, archived of course. He's now joining the growing chorus of people trying to make excuses for why Biden shouldn't debate Trump. And I've said now for months that when it comes down to it, there will be a push by people around Biden not to debate. They'll use excuses. Oh, he's so far ahead in the polls, it doesn't matter. There's an epidemic going on. He's got bigger things to do. Trump will just lie anyway, so it doesn't matter. Trump won't agree to the debate terms. Oh, he wanted more than 3 debates and stuff. The Trump camp has sort of been hoodwinking too on this. The idea that there was any possibility that they would switch to having more than 3 presidential debates to go for 5 or half a dozen or whatever Trump was asking for, that's really a ploy. They knew that would never be feasibly agreed to either by the Biden camp or by the people that actually formulate the debates. Never going to happen. Trump did that as a throwaway to his fans because what it does is it makes Biden look afraid to debate him by not agreeing to the expanded terms. That's manipulative. But when his fans, rather, come out and say, well, Trump's just going to lie anyway, and if he's not going to debate fairly. So basically, if Trump doesn't come out and admit defeat right at the start and bow and take a knee and stuff like that, like he's a bad man. If he wins, he's a bad person, basically, is the insinuation. But the real reason why the Biden camp honestly doesn't want the debates and would be overjoyed if all the venues canceled and there was no way to have them at least physically so that Biden can cheat by having a teleprompter and multiple screens behind the camera in his office while he's sitting there in his comfy pajamas. The reason why they don't want it is because they know he can't debate Trump. At the end of the day, it's going to be impossible for someone with dementia, which Biden has, quite clearly, objectively and observably. He has cognitive decline, dementia, Alzheimer's, whatever you want to call it. He's not the same Biden he was even 5 years ago. You can see the difference. Trump acts the same way he did 5 years ago. Biden doesn't. Biden is approaching 80 years old and has cognitive decline. The other really bad part for Biden is it's going to be real goddamn difficult for him to maneuver the troubled waters between talking about his record, which really is the only real platform selling point he has. Oh yeah, I was in government for 50 years. I was VP, senator, and so forth. And reconciling that with the fact that, unfortunately, vast parts of his record are no longer considered progressive enough to be palatable to a large chunk of the Democratic voting base that's under 40. Unfortunately, Biden's problem in this election, and I've talked about this since he got in, his problem is that he needs to somehow find a way to keep the moderates and the independents on board while at the same time whipping up the younger, more far-left voters into a frenzy to get him enthused, because lower turnout will sink his career. It doesn't matter if he goes into this election with a 5-point advantage. I think even in a 5-point matchup advantage, Biden loses. And I'll tell you why. It's all about enthusiasm. Trump has higher in-party enthusiasm than Ronald Reagan. That 40-ish% of the population that forms his hardened floor, 40, 41, somewhere around there, by the way, perfectly accurate and where it would bottom out on RCP in the aggregates. So congrats to me, singing my own song there. What's happened is that group will have massive turnout. Biden's partisan and charismatic sort of loyalist core is, number one, appears to be smaller, is probably in the mid-30s, and number two, is not nearly as enthused. In fact, there's no enthusiasm. I keep talking to people that say, yeah, I see Trump signs up, but I don't see a single Biden sign. Nobody wants to have a Biden sign in their fucking front yard. There are plenty of people that'll have never Trump signs, or a hanging Trump effigy, something like that, but they're not enthused for Biden. They hate Trump, but the alternative is someone with dementia, and he can't debate. And the problem is he's leaning still, it appears, towards Kamala Harris. What a double knockout. What a double knockout for his campaign. On the one hand, you have someone who, other than once at the debates, namely I believe the first one, was shitty. She was consistently in the lower half of debaters, especially towards the end of her run. You're putting her up against Mike Pence. He's not the most brilliant strategist, but he is reasonably well-spoken. He did well at the debate with Tim Kaine. He can easily out-debate Kamala. And number two, she was also a tough-on-crimer in the same period as Biden. They practically worked together to jail hundreds of thousands of largely innocent young black men for nonviolent convictions for extended sentences under the 3 strikes rule and things like that. They practically partnered up on these things. They were working on the same stuff at the same time. She was an overzealous prosecutor. and a virulent bigot, by the way, and Joe Biden is too. And he can't debate. How are you supposed to debate? You can't run on your record. What's he supposed to do? Say, well, you're a bad man, Donald. You're a racist. That's basically going to be his debate strategy. Well, the coronavirus deaths, and Trump will obviously counter, well, that's mostly because of blue state activities. The states have to respond. The federal government lacks the constitutional authority. Read the 10th Amendment, Joe. Joe Biden will say something like, well, you're a racist. And he'll say, oh, well, you ain't black. It's going to be a wash, dude. I can't think of a single real angle of attack. The thing is, Biden doesn't have to convince people that already support him. They already think that Trump is a racist. Trump kills people with viruses, stuff like that. You've got to target independent voters, that 15-20% that haven't made up their minds to any significant degree. And then there's a margin beyond that, maybe another 10% of the population that leans one direction or the other. You might be able to woo them over, but probably not. The thing is, Trump starts off with a structural advantage in this election. I love it when people are making the same goddamn mistakes of looking at polling matchups and cherry-pick polls usually, as they did in 2016. Didn't you learn your lesson, Nate Silver? A little bit. He's upgraded from Nate Metaconglomerate or to Nate Alum Powder or something like that. At this point, at least he's willing to admit that if the polling is close, Trump probably manages to win because of the existence of the Electoral College. It's a little bit of an excuse-making attempt. He's basically, I'll tell you what he's doing, because he is still intelligent. He's laying the groundwork for what he perceives of as an outsized possibility of a Trump win. That's what he's doing. He's hedging himself. He was all declarative in 2016. Oh, he learned his lesson. After 2018, didn't really manifest a blue wave outside of a few House races. He definitely learned it then. He's hedging at this point. I'm not hedging. I'm telling you there's a 90% chance. I'm upgrading him back to 90. There's a 90% chance that Trump will win the presidency again. And part of it will be this. People are, these groups, New York Times, WAPO, and so forth, that are writing these pieces and begging Joe not to debate. They're probably doing it under direct guidance from the Biden camp. At least behind the scenes, emails are being sent between these various groups. One hand washes the other. They're setting the groundwork for Biden to make one of two choices, to debate or not to debate. If he debates, they've laid the groundwork in the mind of their left-leaning audiences that Trump will cheat. And so when Trump prevails, at the very least, it won't change their minds. And they expect him to prevail in a debate. Or he cannot debate and he can say, well, everyone's telling me not to debate you, Donald, because you're just a chronic liar. Things have changed now. We've got an epidemic. Nothing's the same. We've got to fundamentally overhaul everything. We've got to build it back better, which is about the most dumb slogan ever. It's so much more. Make America great again, or keep America great, whichever you want, is a pretty high-grade sloganeering job. Build back better. What the fuck what was he smoking when he thought that one up? I think that Biden actually dreamed that one up himself because it's so inept. Whenever something is really bumbling and happens in his campaign, just assume that Biden decided to insinuate himself in the decision-making process. So I'm not surprised that they're urging him not to debate. I would urge him not to debate. It'll probably hurt him in the polls because it'll make him, rightfully, look like a coward. But he'll get hurt more if he does debate him. It's not wrong. The strategy is technically sound. And of course, but Biden, I think, still wants to be the big boy. Like when he tells stories about corn pop and I'm going to wrap this chain around your head and challenging people to push-up contests, I think he'd be real upset if he couldn't debate because I think he doesn't realize how shitty he'd really do. I don't think he quite realizes yet that he's cuckoo. He flew over the cuckoo's nest twice. That's about all. Peace out.